dive into more, or if you want us to move things along faster, we're just excited to chat about all this.
So we are live on Coffee with Clergy. We'll get started with our conversation in just a second, but love to just welcome everyone who's watching on Facebook. Good afternoon. We have amazing, amazing guests joining us today. Oh, thank you all so much for being here. Does anyone have a beverage by any chance?
I took this quite literally. I have my tea ready to go.
Amazing. Coffee's a little cold right now, but I think it's a great product.
My Emma's Torch mug that I recently purchased from the restaurant at our garage sale. So I was very excited to use it.
How did the garage sale go?
It was really fun. I had a blast. It was nice to see all of our neighbors came out to support the organization. And I don't know, I think it went well, guys. What did you guys think?
I think it went really well. It was, I would say, alarming to some neighbors, when people don't actually read, right? So they skip over the actual reopening garage sale and they think it's clear out and closing. So it's good to see sort of frowns turn upside down. But it was really good to just again, be relevant in the neighborhood.
Yeah, the amazing part of being in that location is just the overwhelming support that we do get from the neighborhood. So it was really great to see, automatically, right when the door is open, people are back and, they're curious and they're talking with us about how they can't wait to, see what we got in store next or have some of their old favorites. So it's great.
Oh, that's an amazing, amazing reintroduction to the neighborhood. Well, let's get started with our conversation. I'm so excited to have you guys on. Carrie, we've talked before in front of the Central community, and Alex and Kim, it's such an honor to be able to introduce you as well to our Central members and everyone who's watching on Facebook. I would love if maybe we could just start with some introductions. And Carrie, maybe we'll start with you, and you can tell us also a little bit about Emma's Torch and the organization, and then everyone can speak about their role and just a little about their background.
Of course, and thank you so much for having us. It's really just such a treat. The last time I got to participate was in April, and it feels in some ways like it's been a lifetime. In other ways, where did the time go? So my name's Carrie. I'm the executive director and founder of Emma's Torch. Emma's Torch is a nonprofit. We do culinary training and job placement services for refugees, asylees, and survivors of human trafficking. And what we do is that we completely embed our training program into the operations of our food businesses. And so we have a restaurant in Carroll Gardens, a cafe at the Brooklyn Public Library, and a catering business. And we're about to launch our first packaged goods business as well. So it's been really exciting over the last 4 years to see the organization evolve and to see the way that it's impacted our students. And so we're just really grateful to be here. And kind of my role is to keep the lights on, but also to give my incredible colleagues who have joined us today the chance to really shine and do a great job. So with that, I'll pass it over to one of my partners in this, Alex Harris.
Hello, everybody. Again, thank you for having us. And I am the culinary director here at Emma's Torch. And what that really means is that I handle everything that applies to kind of food and what we're doing inside of the kitchen. So whether you're talking about, the menus that we create, the teaching day-to-day of the students, putting together the different aspects of the operations that Carrie just started to describe with our food delivery or our retail, all of that kind of falls into my lap, as well as I've been cooking for a little while now, so I have some relationships in the industry, and so I rely on some of those relationships to kind of help us along the way for the education of our students, or for placing them in jobs afterwards, or for helping to set up mentors, as well as kind of the last step in that is, working to develop new relationships with and find new partners in the industry as well. So just a little bit about kind of my slice of the pie when it comes to the students and the operation. My partner in crime below me, Kim, take it away.
Yeah, so I am the general manager of Emma Storch, the 1/3 of this tripod here, and generally manage. But pre-COVID closure, I was really on the ground running daily operations in the restaurant Kale Gardens. And then once the Avenger team reassembled back in June, it's really getting the doors or the business safe enough for our students to return, actually starting tomorrow. So really my main goal is to create a safe workplace, also pivoting to a lot of different ventures that Emma Storch is pivoting to. That is, Carrie spoke to you about the consumer packaged goods that we're launching starting next month. We're also, getting a lot of interest in virtual cooking classes. Interesting following the, COVID consumer behavior. That's what everyone's sort of on right now. And then, secondary roles is eating ice cream and watching Star Wars with Alex, and also doting on Carrie's one-year-old daughter.
There's so many amazing things happening.
Yeah.
Thank you all so much for just sharing a little bit about your work there. I would love to hear a little bit about like a day in the life at Emma Storch. I know so much happens on site, and maybe we'll do like a kind of pre-pandemic, and then now kind of you're welcoming your students back, and kind of what that looks like just in the building and in the neighborhood.
Sure. So a day in the life at Emma Storch is really, I guess one word to describe it is dynamic, right? So one of the things that we often talk about is kind of our two-way conversation in our educational process. So it kind of starts with the classroom setting, where we will kind of start with a lecture with our students. And then quickly from there, kind of what we want to do is get everyone involved in this conversation. So it's a lot of kind of poking and prodding and asking kind of questions on the periphery of the subject to get everybody really thinking about what we're talking about and how some of the things that they didn't even know kind of applied to the subject really do, and kind of spark more of an interest and get everybody really kind of riled up about, the subject that we're getting into. From that part, then we kind of really get into more of the hands-on aspect. So, we're getting our knives out, we're, turning burners on, and we're really getting into it. I think a big part of it is, a big part of this educational process is the repetition. So we really try to make sure that we can really, get as many reps in our, condensed amount of time as possible, so that everybody gets the most out of their time. And then from there, kind of conversation talks a little bit more as we're cooking into the application and, kind of the what's next to it all. Why are we doing this? So, from that cooking something that one day, okay, now you know how to do this. Where does this knowledge take you in your, dreams and aspirations? I think pre and post COVID is pretty much the same. A huge part of the post COVID now changes a little bit more to our social responsibility when it comes to public health. And so there's a lot of that in the mix as well. I think, Kim, you want to kind of add to that when we're talking a little bit more about public health?
Yeah, I would say, It's interesting just how universal and, beyond borders actually, safety is. We have been leading a lot of safety classes, virtual classes, with our students, I would say probably at least once a week, to prepare our alumni to get back into the workplace. That's not just, our workplace, but also across in other businesses. And it's interesting just beyond vocabulary and practices, how important that is to our students. So that's what we're really preparing for starting tomorrow. Is we're pivoting starting actually in November to a carry out and delivery model. We're keeping, guests out. We're trying to control what we can. And that is keeping our students, beyond these plexi shields and away from, all these external factors.
Actually, when we think about the difference day to day of pre and post COVID, it's almost as though pre-COVID, we were very specific that our mission is to train our graduates to start jobs. And that's what we did. And that is our silo, and we stayed in it. And we thought about community, but it wasn't ingrained in every single action. The post-COVID day to day is different because when somebody walks into our door, they're having a temperature check to protect us as a community. When we make choices about whether or not we're going to do indoor dining or how we're going to do food in general, we're thinking less about ourselves and more about this role that we play in the ecosystem. So one thing that we didn't even mention, which is exciting, is that starting at the end of the month, we'll also be doing about 600 meals a week for a partner nonprofit through another organization, so that our students can feel at every turn that the actions that they take today, the decisions that they make this minute, are immediately impacting the broader community. They're immediately contributing and immediately a part of this kind of collective mission to keep us all safe and healthy and fed.
One more thing to add, actually. So we started a Culinary Leadership Fellowship last week, which is essentially, a sous chef, but a manager in training, training our graduates to really prepare for a managerial position. So Ruslan, who started on our team last Friday, kind of an anecdote, he saw a mover, because we've been moving a lot of things in our space to pivot to this cafe model. He saw one of our movers. He hadn't had his temperature checked, and he was just starting to come in the door. He was like, "Hey, Kim, letting you know that he hasn't had his temperature checked, or he hasn't had his questionnaires filled out." We are all ambassadors in this ride. So I think it's really kind of cool to give him a shout out here.
Very cool. I think that kind of pivot is something that we at Central and everywhere people are taking on. And I love how it's kind of calling you to more active engagement with broader community, and that this has really revealed how connected we all are, and how much we have to rely on each other to keep everyone safe. So thank you for that. I'm excited to kind of talk about our next big initiative together, which is that Central and Emma Storch are teaming up to kind of celebrate Parshat Lech Lecha together. So at the end of the month, Central will be offering Shabbat dinners from Emma Storch, and also in addition to that, a cooking class with Alex to help prepare the meal. So I'm wondering if we could talk a little about what the Shabbaks is, this amazing new plan for the Shabbaks, and then also a little bit about how it relates to Parshat Lech Lecha. Lech Lecha, as we know, is a story of Abraham and Sarah leaving their homeland in search of a land full of promise. And I think that maybe that story resonates with your students a little bit. So maybe Carrie, you can just start us off on the Shabbaks and how that whole story resonates with Parshat Lech Lecha.
I'm so excited about this opportunity. I think one of the things that has really been kind of on all of our minds is this idea that the power of our work, the power of food, is bringing people together. And that's the opposite of what we can do right now. We actually are deliberately supposed to keep people apart. And so while we all have to be physically apart, we've been thinking of ways that we can. How do you have a Shabbat experience? How do you have a meal experience where people are gathering together virtually? And so we're really excited to be piloting this idea of the Shabbaks, Shabbat in a box, which is everything you need to have your Shabbat dinner and also to have that nourishment of your soul. And so Alex will be teaching a cooking class, and all the ingredients are in the box, and there's already some pre-cooked food. So if you're hungry, you can snack while you're cooking. But something I get asked a lot is whether Emma's Torch is a Jewish organization. And my answer is always yes and no, which makes it the most Jewish answer you can possibly give to it. So Emma's Torch was named after Emma Lazarus, who was a Jewish lady with a lot of chutzpah in the 1800s. And she wrote the poem that's on the Statue of Liberty, which something that I think a lot about is that the poem on the Statue of Liberty and the message of Lech Lecha are actually almost like two parts of the same puzzle. So the Statue of Liberty is saying, give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free. And Lech Lecha is saying, go from your home, from your father's home, to a land that I will show you. And while I don't think that Abraham was being instructed to get on a boat to go to Ellis Island, I do think this idea is really interesting, that we have all both had the opportunity to experience the Lech Lecha, the active choice to seek out something new and a new spiritual journey or a new physical journey. And we also have the active choice to say, welcome, come here. I want to see you here. And so it's so serendipitous that we get the opportunity to partner in this way, because I think that Lech Lecha is the beginning of a journey that a lot of our students have been on. And our hope is to be that receptor, to be that welcoming voice. So we're just really excited to be a part of it.
I'd love to hear maybe a little bit, maybe more about your students too, and kind of what they're up to now, and kind of their stories as modern day Abrahams and Sarahs, kind of on this journey. How does this idea of going forward from your homeland, how does that play into your work in the day to day, and really how are the students and the alumni doing right now?
Alex, you too. Go ahead.
Yeah, again, I think there's definitely a pre and post COVID part to this answer. A lot of our students have really been ready and passionate and raring to go once they have finished the program and really taken the things that they've learned in our program to heart and dive right into the industry. And so we've had many of our students really get into their foot in the door into positions that they dreamed that they could in some of the best restaurants, both in our neighborhood and in the city. I think one of the biggest parts post-COVID is that restaurant dining is very, very different. But I think in a lot of ways, many of our students' hopes and dreams haven't really changed much. So a lot of students did a very natural to them pivot from working inside of restaurants to then starting to internalize in this time of being, early time of sheltering in place, and then focusing on what their entrepreneurial ideas were and where that could take them. And many of our students have worked that way and kind of started to strengthen their online presence, or started to do their own cooking from home, or develop their own kind of event planning and moving from there. So it's been it's been an opportunity, I think, for both us and a lot of our students to really refocus, in this time of post-COVID, and come back with a vengeance. So it's been really great to see as well.
Another feature of our students is that, so our students come from over 40 different countries, and they fled, we all know the stories. We can think about, like, what does it mean to be an LGBT asylum seeker from Russia? What does it mean to be a woman fleeing with her 4 children from Afghanistan? What does it mean to be a survivor of human trafficking? But something that I've always so admired about our students is that when I think of our students and when I talk to our students, it's a lesson in optimism and hope. Our students are very much focused on not just what they can achieve for themselves and for their families, but I think, in just going back to your question about Lech Lecha, the imperative is, and you shall be a blessing. And I think that there's something I've always believed about our students that I joke, I run a nonprofit, but I don't run a charity. We are so blessed to work with our students. We're so lucky to live in a community where our students are able to do these things. And I'm just honored to be part of their journey. And I think that COVID has really shown that in spades. We very soon after shutting down in-person operations started doing these, actually in the beginning, almost daily online classes. And what really became clear is that our students were not worried about themselves. They were worried about their community. They were making masks for each other. They were sharing, hey, I got too many groceries. Can I cook for you? Or my neighbor isn't able to leave the house. What recipe should I be using to cook for them? And I've just been so blown away by that idea of mutual responsibility and mutual aid that our students have really brought to my attention and taught me so much about. So we refer to our students as students, but I also think that we're constantly learning from them about how to be better community partners, how to be better individuals, but also think about the collective more.
So beautiful, and it really kind of so resonates with the tour portion, which is why I'm so excited we're teaming up on Lech Lecha. And if anybody's interested, we'd love to have this Shabbat dinner with you all together. There is in the chat box right now, Lauren has put the registration information on Facebook. Also in your Central Weekly, you've received information on how to register. And I am so excited, especially for the cooking class with Alex. Alex, do you want to just share a little bit about maybe what we're cooking or something about the menu?
Sure. Yeah, once again, that learning process that we're always talking about is always going both ways, from us to our students and our students right on back. And the menu that we're doing is no different. This menu is largely a representation of kind of the latest group of students, where they represent, and kind of some of the things that I've started to kind of pick out of the way that they communicate with food, and then my study on my own and bringing that back into the menu for Emma's Torch. So what we're going to be doing is kind of a mix between, and when I re-represent it, it's always a little bit of a mix between us as Americans and representing the countries of our students. So, and this is no different, right? It's a hand pie, which straight out the South, right? But the filling on the inside is very much a representation of a stew dish on the east of Africa, just called wap. It's very heavily spiced. No fear, it's not going to blow your mouth off. It's not, fire spice, but it's just very flavorful. There is heat to it, but very well-rounded flavor on the meat filling for this hand pie. Never fear, there's always an meat-free option. So the same stew can also be done. In this case, we're going to be doing it with squash and peppers. Once again, bringing it back to a common American flavor profile, going all the way back to our Native American part of our history. Paired with that, for dipping, is going to be something that can come up to, not combat, but go along with the spice and kind of cut through a little bit of that heat. It's going to be a tamarind sauce. Once again, something that's fairly common in the islands below the United States and in the northern part of Africa. And then two other elements, right? We've got the kale and Fono salad, very much Middle Eastern inspired. Think tabbouleh, right? So you got that grain and that herb element. In this case, that herb element replaced with kale in our grain. Fono, very much like quinoa in South America. It is a non-wheat quote unquote super grain that's got a lot of minerals and protein inside. So very hearty, flavorful salad. And then bring back to North Africa again with the yam cake. Yam, very much different than what we call yams in the United States. We call sweet potatoes yams for whatever reason, not really sure. But this is a yam. It is a brown skin tuber with white flesh. Cooks up with a little bit of a sweetness. And so paired with that, taking some dried fruit from the north of Africa and making that into a preserve for the top of it. So yeah, that's just a little bit about kind of the what's on the menu and kind of the inspiration behind it.
What I love about that menu, Alex, is that I have had so much fun sitting and just listening in on you teaching for so many years. And I think that this menu, in addition to really showcasing what we've learned from our student, it also showcases what we mean by learning through doing. So the techniques that you learn by doing this dish, you're learning how to work those fundamentals of working with pastry. You know, everybody talks about their pastry as being the best and how do you get a flaky pastry dough? Well, this is in the dish. How do you season things appropriately? How do you pair sauces with that seasoning? And so when I was just getting started, people said, you're crazy. How could you have teaching that ends up on the menu? You're going to have people eating like chopped up potatoes into cubes for 4 months, which is like what a lot of culinary school can be. But I think what Alex has done and what this experience will be like is not just learning this specific set of ingredients, but learning all these techniques that you can then apply to your favorite pie dough, your favorite stew, your favorite sauces, how you think about salads. One of our students introduced me to Fono, and it's been quite a revelation of just a really delicious, different approach to grain, especially for people who have gluten intolerances. So that's my other little plug of how I have learned a lot from this type of teaching.
I think like an evergreen one-liner about, you know, what we prepare at Emma's Torch is that it's new American food prepared by new Americans. I'm stealing that from Carrie. I think she had put that on the website or some. I think it's a really great sort of like, it sums up what we do and what we prepare for those around us.
I love that, and really speaks to the ways in which American identity is kind of constantly evolving and also in touch with our history and reflecting on history. Alex, as you're talking about, there are elements that come from way back in American history. But also kind of new elements as America's makeup changes and evolves and grows. And I would love kind of to hear from all of you as we're kind of closing our conversation. If we can kind of talk a little bit about, we look out over our country right now, and there is a lot of suffering. There's a lot of conversation happening, and we spoke about really in Parshat Lech Lecha the kind of power that comes maybe from moments of rupture. A lot of pain in moments when we come at these moments where maybe we decide we have to change things, we have to do something new, we have to set off in search of another land. And there's a lot of pain in that, but there's also a lot of possibility, as you guys have talked about, and the ways that your students have pivoted throughout their lives and the ways that you have pivoted during COVID, and the ways that Sarah and Abraham left and set off for a new land. There's so much possibility that comes from moments of discontinuity. And so I'm kind of wondering if you guys have been witness to so much of that possibility, and you've been agents of that, of helping people build new lives. If you could kind of just share maybe a vision for our city or for our country right now, just how do we kind of bring more justice and equity to our world, especially grounded in what you've seen at Emma's Torch and in your own lives?
I'm going to jump in here. So what we're actually doing starting next month, in addition to our carry out and delivery model, we're partnering with an organization called Rethink. And you might have heard of it. They, I would say pre-COVID, were pulling essentially what would have been food waste from restaurants and then, preparing them for food insecure families. Post-COVID, they have helped a lot of struggling restaurants to reopen and are essentially providing funding to restaurants to, have a more steady stream of revenue. And they're allowing restaurants to prepare individual meal boxes for these food insecure families, including frontline workers. So, it's a really kind of win-win-win. It's really kind of helping this nonprofit Rethink thrive. It's feeding those who, are helping to support this pandemic, who are also struggling to put food on the tables, and they're also helping us get up and running. So I think that's a really one thing that we're trying to maintain through the end of the year.
Alex, do you want to go or should I jump in?
Yeah, I can go. So I think that things that happen, it's always about finding the opportunity, right? And the unfortunate events that happened earlier in the year, the opportunity in that is that it created kind of an awakening in a lot of people in a lot of communities. There are a lot more people that are walking around with their eyes and their ears open. And this is very fortunate for everyone, and specifically for us and what we do. It helps us establish more connections so that we can have more points along the way to have people that we can rely on to get our students and our smaller community out there into the larger community, and with the help of more leaders and business owners that are here in this city, in our communities, that look like them and represent them in the best way possible.
Yeah, I am, first of all, just grateful that I think that we're when you are faced with so much darkness, it's about finding the people who bring light. And I think that the communities that reach out to us, that want to work with us, are the people who show up every day and say, we're seeing something that is deeply broken and we think that we can try and heal it. I think about the Rosh Hashanah Dvar Torah that was so beautiful at Central Synagogue, of this idea of breaking and pain can be an essential part of rebuilding. And we definitely see our role in it, even if it's a small one. I mentioned earlier that we're named after Emma Lazarus, who was a famous Jewish poet. But I've lately been thinking a lot about another famous Jewish female poet, Chana Senesh, who one of her poems is this idea that how blessed is the match that gets to be burning bright in darkness and gets consumed by that brightness. And so Chana Senesh was, I'm sure most of you know, was a paratrooper, and she fought the Nazis and was ultimately killed. But that idea of we can look at such devastation around us and pity ourselves, and there's so much pain, and there are days that it feels like completely insurmountable. But I think that the work that we get to do, the people we get to work with, the communities we get to engage with, are part of those little matches, and maybe those little spots of light can add up together. I think I was joking with, I had a call with some other nonprofit leaders, and we always say, you can't make an omelet without cracking some eggs. And we've basically cracked all the eggs at this point. It's time to make the omelet. And so we're just very, I think that without being Pollyannish or naive, we feel a deep swell of optimism of what we can fix, because there is so much brokenness out there.
We of course, as well, have been trying to reimagine Jewish life at this time, and thinking about how we can turn our homes into sacred spaces and build that sacred community, even when we're not physically together. And I'm so grateful to all of you for helping us have a Shabbat dinner together, to help us reimagine Shabbat dinner at the end of the month. And again, the link is in the chat. You'll get it in your email addresses, all Central members. And this is just an amazing opportunity to think about what it means to celebrate Shabbat in a distant way. And I also just want to say too that we are so grateful that you are sharing your wisdom with us, and that you are illuminating the path toward a better and more equitable future for everyone who resides in America, and that we are following your lead in this and are just so grateful to partner with you. So thank you for being that match, that torch, carrying on the legacy of Emma Lazarus, and for just shining that and letting us bask in your glow.
Thank you for including us. We couldn't be more excited. Aside from the delicious meal, it's just I found that 5 years ago, almost exactly, I had this really nuts idea that I was telling my husband about, and he said, so what's stopping you? And I've had a lot of time to think about that question, what's stopping me? And I think the real answer is nothing was ever stopping me, but it's communities like Central Synagogue. It's people in your community, like David, like so many people who just say, hey, what can I do to help? And that's the only way that things like this happen. It's the only way that things get better. So we're just really grateful to be in partnership with all of you and with so many people.
Thank you so much, Carrie and Alex and Kim. And we can't wait to have dinner with you. And we can't wait once we can to visit the space and come be in the restaurant. So thank you so much for joining us today. And I just encourage everyone to check out your emails and the link and really see this menu. It's incredible. Alex is doing a cooking class. It's going to be an amazing Shabbat experience. So the Shabbats, Amos Storch's gift to the world, the Shabbats. Thank you all so much.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you.
Talk to you soon.
Much, Rabbi Hilly.
Bye.